In the words of a great philosopher, picture it, Bahamas, 1978. A young girl is born into a family filled with both love and chaos. That young girl is me. I was born on the beautiful island of the Bahamas, a place many come to seek rest and relaxation, something that often eluded me as a child. I grew up in a very abusive household. I had a father that struggled with alcoholism and would get so drunk and so violent, he would spend nights terrorizing our home. When my father was intoxicated, his rage and his ire would turn on my mother. He would abuse her and then lock her out of our home. This was so common, our neighbors could set their clocks to it. And every time it would happen, our neighbors would come outside and they would offer solace. They would offer to call the police. They would even offer to wait with her until the police came. But they didn't often offer refuge. They didn't often say, you and the kids can stay in our home until your husband sobers up and calms down. What I would have understood to be empathy in those moments was really just sympathy. Our neighbors were good people, and they felt terrible for what was happening to my mom and us as kids. But they were also grateful it was not happening to them. That experience as a kid and watching the lack of empathy that my mother experienced sparked something in me, a knowing that I didn't just want to feel bad for others with gratitude that it wasn't happening to me, but if it were me, what would I want others to do? How do I show up in other people's lives at sometimes the darkest corner of it? How do I move from sympathy to empathy? And what does that look like? How do I do that, not just in a practical way, but an impactful way? Be careful what you ask of the universe. It just may create opportunities for you. Picture it, Fort Lauderdale, 2006. I'm working in nurse staffing and managing and placing nurses all over the country. A young Indian woman has just immigrated to pursue her nursing career in this country, filled with opportunities and possibilities. She arrives with her young son and her husband. I am immediately drawn to her. She is kind, she is generous, meek in spirit, and filled with gratitude. But something in me recognized something in her. I recognized an abused woman. I watched as the light dimmed in her. I saw the loneliness. I recognized it in her because I had lived it with my mother. When women are abused, they are filled with both shame and isolation. Shame because they believe they cannot get themselves out of the situation they're in. And because of that shame, they isolate. Because I recognized her, I could empathize with her. I'm now being presented with an opportunity to demonstrate empathy and not just sympathy. Empathy is the ability to feel for another, to place yourself in their shoes. But empathy has to go beyond feeling. It must be unleashed. And what does that look like? It looks like not only could I imagine this thing happening to me, but if it were me, what would I want the other person to do for me? My empathy was not just seeing my mother in her, but how do I help her in a way that my mother wasn't? How do I let her know that she's not alone, that she doesn't have to feel shame, that she is like millions of women and men who are abused at the hands of somebody who was supposed to love them? that the shame did not belong to her, it belonged with him. Picture it, Fort Myers, 2007. I'm scheduled to visit my nurses, something I often did. This time, though, I'm making a surprise visit to Rupinder. She doesn't know I'm coming, and I don't want her to. Victims of abuse spend a lot of time hiding the evidence of that abuse. I didn't want her to hide. She didn't have to. Life synchronized it so that as I arrived at her door, her husband was getting ready to abuse her. I knocked on the door and interrupted what would have been another beating. She opens the door, shocked and relieved. We both understood in that moment what my presence just prevented. My visits usually lasted anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. This time, I'm prepared to stay as long as necessary, and I did. After about 30 minutes, her husband finally left the home, and for the first time since she had arrived in America, she could tell somebody what was happening to her. Somebody saw her. Somebody was empathizing with her. But most importantly, somebody wanted to help her. We spent the remainder of that visit talking through how she and her son could leave and leave safely. Before I left, I hugged her and I told her she, just like my mother, is stronger than she knows. When I got back home, I received an email from Rupinder thanking me for listening, for caring, and wanting to help. 2 days later, I got a call from the Fort Myers Police Department asking me when was the last time I had seen or heard from my nurse. The hospital had reported her missing after she failed to show up for 2 shifts, and her husband said she hadn't been home for 2 days. Rupinder's young son with special needs. That child was her life, her reason for living. She would never not come home to him. And although she was going through so much at home, her nurse managers could depend on her to show up for her shift. I wish this is the part of the story where I tell you I helped this beautiful soul escape an abusive relationship with her son and her life. Unfortunately, that's not how this story ends. Rupinder's body was later found. She was not found alive. And while I am still heartbroken that this beautiful light was extinguished from this world, I am heartened that she knew somebody saw her and somebody wanted to help her. I am further comforted that although she did not leave that marriage with her life, her son did. He was later adopted by a beautiful family in Fort Myers and is loved and thriving. Her husband was prosecuted for her murder. When we unleash empathy in ourselves, we can change the course of another person's life as well as our own. I am forever changed by my encounter with Rupinder, and I pray that she was changed by her encounter with me. Empathy is not just a virtue, it's a fundamental necessity to building a more compassionate and harmonious world. Empathy is what allows us to forge deep and meaningful connections with one another. It is the cornerstone to building strong, supportive relationships and communities. It helps us bridge the gap between people of different backgrounds, cultures, and experiences. I, a Black woman from the Bahamas, and she, an Indian woman from Kerala, were connected through lived experiences and empathy. It forced us to break down barriers of prejudice and bias and compelled us to seek understanding rather than judgment. When we empathize with others, we acknowledge their humanity, their struggle, their lived experiences. Empathy unleashed and unbridled has the power to transform lives. It's not a fleeting feeling, it's an action, a force that can break the chains of isolation and despair. I encountered a woman who was isolated and deeply in despair. Every person we meet has a story, and in our hands, we hold the key to understanding, compassion, impactful change should we lead with empathy. Rupinder's story, although heart-wrenching, serves as a poignant reminder that empathy is not a one-time event, but a continuous commitment. We must strive to be the people we needed when we were in the darkest corners of our own lives. Imagine empathy not just being a virtue, but a way of life, one that forces us to seek understanding, to learn about each other's differences, and to celebrate our shared humanity. I want to encourage you to reflect on the power of empathy in your own lives, not just in moments of crisis, but in your everyday interactions. Together, we can build a more connected and compassionate world, one where empathy is not just a concept, but a driving principle that shapes our collective destiny, where we know that empathy is never lost.